Okay, so for this chapter, I'm just going to be putting together a range of very short videos that discuss some of these key concepts, just to give us a little bit more time in class to delve into these concepts in a little bit more detail. So to start off with, the goal of full employment. The goal of full employment is the maximum sustainable rate of employment, which allows for economic growth without running into inflationary or external pressures. So basically what it means is we want to grow as fast as we possibly can, without have the lowest unemployment possible without causing inflation or essentially external pressures. And external pressures, that basically just means that we're importing too much and going into too much debt. So some of the issues with having too much employment or not enough unemployment is that it's going to cause higher wages, and that will lead to higher costs of production and we'll import more. And secondly, if we have really low unemployment, a lot of people have got more money, and that can flow on to increased can flow on into increased spending on imports as well. So we want the maximum sustainable rate of employment, which will allow for economic growth without running into inflationary or external pressures, and it's generally around 4 to 5%, and it means there's zero cyclical unemployment. Cyclical unemployment is the unemployment caused by weak demand side conditions. That's what we want to avoid. Other types of unemployment, like structural unemployment, frictional unemployment, are all types of natural unemployment, which are okay, but we want to avoid cyclical unemployment. The NIRO, you'll hear this term NIRO, it stands for the non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment. So basically the lowest unemployment that we can tolerate that's not going to cause excessive inflation. And it's currently when we have unemployment of around 4 to 5%. Although that NIRO changes based on whether we, partly based on how quickly we can increase our productive capacity, or whether we're able to sustain really low unemployment without having excessive inflationary pressures. You'll also see a term called the Phillips Curve. The Phillips Curve is just a graph that basically measures the trade-off between unemployment and inflation. So it's got employment on one axis and inflation on the other, and it looks a little bit like this. And basically what it's saying is that the higher the level of employment, the higher the level of inflation, or the lower the level of unemployment, the higher the level of inflation. So it's a graph that basically shows the trade-off between inflation and unemployment. We don't look at this Phillips curve in much detail, but you just need to know that it's a graph that shows the relationship between inflation and unemployment. Generally, low unemployment is associated with high inflation, because when we have low unemployment, we spend more, and it also puts more pressure on wages. Just note that the NIRO, which is that 4 to 5% rate of unemployment, basically states that we're always going to have a certain level of unemployment for certain reasons, and that includes people moving between jobs and looking for new career development. So you might be an accountant and you want to become a teacher or something like that. That's always going to exist, and people are always going to be unemployed for those reasons. So that's accepted by society and by the ABS. So just really important that full employment does not mean 0% unemployment. It doesn't mean there's no unemployment, because we're always going to have some what we call natural unemployment or supply side unemployment. And that includes structural, hardcore, frictional and seasonal unemployment. We just want to get rid of cyclical unemployment. Alright, to finish off, what are some problems if unemployment is too low? And make sure you read the questions really carefully. Okay, this is asking you what are the problems if we have unemployment that is low as opposed to really high levels of unemployment, because some people have sort of read the questions wrong in the past. So one problem with high levels of unemployment is it can lead to inflation. Okay, because first of all, it leads to demand inflation because people have more money to spend, which stimulates demand and boosts prices, or it can lead to higher costs of production because it leads to higher wages, because there's essentially not as much competition for jobs, and there's a strong demand for labour relative to supply, so wages go up. And it can also lead to low productivity because it's easy to keep your job when there's low unemployment, and therefore people sometimes don't work as hard. It can lead to skill shortages or high capacity utilisation rates. We know that higher wages lead to higher real unit labour costs. So you can talk about it all together. You can say low unemployment leads to skill shortages, which leads to higher wages, which can lead to higher real unit labour costs, and you could even link that back to our international competitiveness. And again, you can link that back to the fact we will import more because we've got more money, and our prices sometimes will go up in Australia. So I suggest you sort of go through the process of it can lead to higher wages, higher real unit labour costs. This can lead to reduced international competitiveness if price goes up, and we might import more. Just to sum up, just some common issues that sort of more related to other videos, but The terms disguised unemployment and underemployed mean the same thing. It means people that aren't working as much as they would like to. The term discouraged is another word for hidden unemployment. So that idea that people can be discouraged from working and leave the labour force. The hidden unemployed aren't in the labour force. These people are in the labour force and they're calculated as employed. True or false? An increase in employment will always result in a decrease in the unemployment rate. That is false. Why? Because it may be because the labour force is getting bigger. True or false? The discouraged worker effect refers to those workers in the workforce who are working below their potential due to dissatisfaction with their job. That is false. That would be the definition of a disguised unemployed or an underemployed person. Thanks for listening.